Welcome back. Class is now in session. We are back at it with another episode of Your Lighting is Bad Because, and today we are talking about lighting ratios. So let's get to it. I'm gonna start you off with a little story. Back in the day when I first started becoming a videographer and I was working my way up to understanding what the hell a DP was or what a cinematographer was, I was always so scared and timid to talk about and say that, hey, I'm a DP or I'm a cinematographer. I literally would never admit that to anybody, especially even as years went on. I just didn't. I heard of the terms, I listened to them, but being from Kansas, the environment of filmmaking was not a real thing for me. So I was always really scared about saying what my true vision was of myself and what I wanted to pursue. So I'd always just say like, I do videos or I'm a videographer. I would never refer to myself as a director or something like that or a filmmaker. And the confidence wasn't there. And I was always trying to figure out how to increase that confidence. I would learn, I would be on YouTube, just like you're doing now. And I would be YouTube University trying to figure out how to be a better DP, trying to figure out how to get better lighting. And I was so obsessed with lighting. In the early days of me lighting, I would look at my work and I would say, okay, I know this looks good, but then I don't really know why. I would light some scenes and I would just blast my talent with lighting and say, okay, I got the big light up. I have a really big light. I don't really know what this means. I don't know what the kind of lighting fixture really is doing, but I know that if I do this and I point the light this way, then it looks pretty good. And then I remember one day that I was shooting this video for K Stylist, an artist out of Kansas City, and I was inside this like swimming venue. I remember putting the lighting over the subject and looking at it and saying, this doesn't look very great, and I twisted it and bounced it right into the ceiling, and all of a sudden it became more flattering, and I wasn't really sure why. I was like, whoa, this looks great, and the way the lighting was falling looked awesome, and I just kept thinking, okay, I need to figure out what I did. I just like bounced the light straight off the ceiling. And there were so many times like this when I would get back into the editing room, I know my taste is saying, this doesn't look good, but my knowledge is saying, I'm not sure why. Again, going back to our YouTube research, I was trying to figure out things, and all of a sudden I stumbled across a video that mentioned if you wanted to take your lighting serious, you would get a light meter. And I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what it did. I didn't know how and why it was useful. But what I did know was they said, if I want to take my cinematography serious, I need one. So I looked up on B&H, Sakonic light meters, and all of a sudden it came up with a list of different light meters. And I stumbled across one that I thought was really cool because it was digital, called the Sakonic 478DU. Now at the time, $379 was really expensive for me. I knew that I had a desire for it, and whatever next check came my way, I was going to spend my money on getting it. When I received it, I was really excited, so when I started using it, it wasn't hard to understand the numbers that were coming out. You would see numbers that were similar to things that you see, like 5.628, these aperture numbers that I was used to seeing on my camera. But I didn't really know what to do with those numbers. It wasn't until years later, when I started working in the lighting department, that I really started to understand more what the light meter was doing for me. DPs would ask me to set their lighting to a certain aperture or f-stop, and I would have to sit there and adjust my lighting as I was setting up the lighting as a gaffer and balance the light to the f-stop that they wanted. So I'm setting up my lights, I'm putting them everywhere I need to, I'm measuring the light, and I'm saying, okay, here it is, you know. Again, not questioning too much other than them asking me to set the light to that aperture. Then I stumbled across an amazing person, someone that was making Hollywood movies and giving their feedback on the internet, and his name was Shane Hurlbut. Shane had a website called Shane's Inner Circle, and I was one of the earlier members. He gave so much great information about his techniques and lighting, and he still does today. He has a great Instagram called the Filmmakers Academy, which I follow, and I love all his tips that he gives me on a daily basis in terms of lighting. So I took this knowledge and I started using it on set when people would hire me as a gaffer. At that time, I really didn't understand the contrast level's significance, even though I understood what the light meter was doing. Through time, I have now learned as I pay attention to my contrast levels, it's achieving the mood that I want in my scene. One key thing to remember is what your f-stop represents. Every time you have one full stop difference, that is twice as much light. There's a couple different ways you can figure out your lighting ratio. The first way is to divide your key light intensity by your fill light intensity. To find your intensity, you convert your f-stop into units of light. The way to do that is to multiply the f-stop by itself. So, for instance, if you have an f2 reading, you multiply that by 2, you get 4 units of light. If you have a measuring of f4, you multiply it by itself, that's 16 units of light. If you have a reading of f8, you multiply by itself and you have 64 units of light. Again, take your key light, take your fill light measuring, convert them to units of light, and then divide the key by the fill and you'll find your ratio.
I'm feeling quite overwhelmed. I have no idea what you just said.
In my opinion, the easiest way to figure out your ratios is by finding the intensity of your f-stop on your key light, measure it, and then find the difference between this and your fill light. You just then go on your f-stop chart and count backwards. And if you don't know what your f-stops are by heart, it's okay. Let's pop them up on the screen. On the f-stop chart, each number represents one stop. So in this example that we're taking outside, we were at a 4 on our key, and we're gonna go to F2 on our fill. So we count backwards from 4 to 2.8, that's one stop. 2.8 to 2, that's 2 stops. And again, a reminder of each f-stop is 2 times as much light. We then just have to multiply by 2. So a 2-stop difference times 2 equals a 4. You're at a 4-to-1 ratio in this scenario. And you do that with any other scenario. So let's say you have 4 stops difference between the key and the fill. 4 times 2, it's an 8. 8-to-1. Algebra's fun. That's why we learned it in school, and that's why we're using it now. In my opinion, this is like a way easier way to figure it out. So maybe you should just like try this way and see how it works. Training your eye to look at contrast levels and moods of scenes is a really great way to see it naturally when you're walking around the world. But one of the great things about using a light meter is that it's helping with that practice of seeing the contrast. We're out in the real world. We're looking at all this interesting contrast that's happening. We have some really dark shadows here in front of us. We have a really bright sunny day. It's kind of partly cloudy, but not really. This stuff looks interesting, like it's very dramatic. As I set up my meter, I could do the filter compensation. I have it set up to where I have a 0.3, 3, and a 6, which gives me 12. Because I set my meter exactly what my camera is, again, ISO 400, 2398, 180, it gives me a reading. So as I take a reading of this negative fill, again, that is about an F2. And as I turn it around to where the light's coming, again, it's kind of like in this 3, 4, 4 world. So again, we can tilt back up to the building. I'll spot meter this. And on the left side of the building with that highlight, I have 11. And on the right is a 5.6. So there's a 2-stop difference. So 1, 2, which is a 4-to-1 ratio. That building has quite a bit of reflective light hitting it back from bouncing off this building and filling in this space. And all this ambient light that's bouncing in, the shadow side is only 2 stops down. What you notice a lot about walking around the real world is that 4-to-1 ratio is often everywhere. So I'm gonna measure this shadow, reflective shadow that's in front of me. Let's see, you're right in front of your camera. That's a 6.7. And again, this highlight on the floor here is a 13. So yeah, about 4-to-1 ratio is existing kind of all in our environment. Now that's on the reflective metering. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch it over and just get what my face is doing with the shadow. So incident metering. The sun directly hitting my face. I feel it hitting my face. It's hot. It's a 13. And then the shadow side of my face is a 5.6. So a 13 is right between 11 and 16 on your f-stops, which is about a 5-to-1. So what I look like right now is a 5-to-1 ratio. I'm gonna receive all this bounce light coming this way at my face. I'm gonna measure this side, and this is my fill side. I got all that light bouncing off these buildings, this building here hitting me here. So let's see what we got going on. I'm gonna retract it too. So I got an F4 here. So on the camera, I don't know where we're set at on the camera. 5.6. So we'll go ahead and open up to a 2.8/4 split. I'm at a f4 here, and I'm at a 2 here. So again, we go backwards, f4 here. If we go backwards on an f-stops, that's 2.8, that's 1 stop. 2, that's 2 stops. So what is similar about this? It's another 4-to-1 ratio. It's exactly the same thing, but in the shade. I am allowing myself to be opened up to a key light still, which is just the light bouncing off of this. So again, a 4-to-1 ratio in the real world. I've noticed it a lot lately as you walk around. Now, what you've probably already done while watching this is either look up a light meter or feel like I need to get one, right? And you're searching, wondering what can you afford or what should you buy, what should you invest in? Don't worry, I was at the same place trying to figure out what they were. And I know with technology nowadays, you're like, I need a digital one. I enjoy my Sekonic 858DU, which is the more pricier, more advanced one that Sekonic offers. I started out with the smaller version, which was really great, but the thing I didn't like about it was that the lighting dome, you had to take on and off and switch from your spot meter to your lighting dome. This piece would come off on the other one, and over time, I would lose it. So what I really love about the 858U is that it comes with both the dome and the spot meter installed. Here's my spot meter right here, and here's my dome, and I can easily switch it, which one I'm using, either reflected or incident meter. I also really love how it's easy to switch between whether or not you're taking stills or flash, or you're in cinema mode or HD mode. They have all sorts of other variation measuring modes that I really love about this light meter. Regardless of whatever light meter you have, the way that you set up your light meter is by first installing and giving it some information. One of the first things you do is type in what your ISO is on your camera or your film stock. Some light meters will give you the option to set what your shutter speed is going to be as well. When you put these few things in and then point your dome straight to the light, take the measurement, it lets you know where we're at. We're at a 3.4. What I really like about this one is that it's giving me a readout on my f-stops, and I could see visually where a 3.4 is between a 2.8 and a 4. So I'm about a 2.8/4 split. If I take a measurement above my head, I see that I'm at a 4.8/4, which is almost a 5.6. So the difference between my key light and here is about a stop and a half. Another really great thing about this one is that I could set it to cinema mode, and I could type in my frames per second. So I have 23,976, which is what my camera is shooting. And I have my dome here. So I could keep it popped out, or I could retract it in to be a little bit more specific. So I retract my bulb in because I don't want to get any of the exterior lights bouncing around. I only want to get my key light here. I'm at a 2.8. If I take a reading at my fill, I'm roughly at a 1.4. So again, I go backwards. I'm at a 2.8 at my key light, so I go backwards 1, that's 2. I go backwards again, that's a 1.4. Now I'm 2 stops down on my light. But again, I have to remember that each stop difference is 2 times as much light. So because I'm 2 stops difference between key and fill, I multiply that by 2, getting 4, meaning that my lighting ratio is now 4-to-1. I could also do this with other things like my background and my backlight, and I can figure out the difference in stops and the ratio difference between my backlight, my key light, and my background. Okay guys, so we're 15 minutes into the episode, this lesson, and I still have about 15-20 minutes left of this content. So I'm gonna split it up. I'm gonna give you the second part next week. So please come back because I'm gonna show you how you can achieve certain lighting ratios. I'm gonna give you the examples of 1-to-1, 2-to-1, 4-to-1, 6-to-1, and 8-to-1 ratios. I'm gonna show you how I achieve them, and I'm gonna tell you which ones are my favorite. Alongside of that, I'm gonna tell you how I use this information to help me light some of my recent shots in my short film that I just released on our YouTube called Best Friends. I wanna tell you that I'm proud of you for working on your knowledge in lighting. Lighting is something that over the years that I've realized has a bigger significance in the way that my images look than any lens or any camera could ever do. Those lenses and cameras help you get specific looks and quality out of your image, but I do believe over the years, what I've seen when I improve my lighting, I could use almost any camera that is put in front of me and make it look absolutely beautiful when I shape my lighting and control it better. I have learned from so many great people over the last 5 years while being on sets with great DPs and great gaffers, great lighting crews. And the thing that I always kick myself for is not paying attention a little more when it came to how they were discussing lighting. I have trained my eye to see something and say, oh, that looks beautiful. But as I practice lighting ratios and using my light meter, I can identify things better on my own. And it helps me communicate to those people on set whether or not I like something. If I don't understand things like lighting ratios, then I'm allowing the gaffer or the lighting or a DP to say that the lighting is good in their opinion. If I can see it, measure it, and say, you know, guys, this is not the ratio that I'm looking for, then I have more control over what my final image is. Otherwise, they're controlling it and they're dictating the look of the film or video that I'm creating. So it's more about having the control and the collaboration and the knowledge to talk to these people and tell them what you like. And then they could see, based off of your understanding, that this is the direction you're trying to go. So this is why this topic is very important. And I thoroughly have enjoyed making it for you guys. And I'm excited to share that second part with you guys, which is, again, the lighting ratio examples. So until next time, thank you again for watching. I appreciate your guys' patience and your guys' love and support for this channel. And again, I remind you, go check out Best Friends if you haven't seen it. It's a personal project. I want you to check it out. I enjoyed it, and I think a lot of people have great feedback from it. So, peace.